Hey guys, tonight we journey across the ancient Silk Roads, but not the one your textbook would expect. No, this version takes a sharp, sandy detour all thanks to a camel who, let's just say, couldn't handle his fermented figs. Imagine it, you're trudging through the blazing dunes of Central Asia, your boots crunching against salt crystals, the sun bouncing off your eyelids like it's in a personal vendetta, when suddenly your lead camel stumbles, burps, and veers off the trail. That's right. This 1,000-year-old trade artery, lifeline of silk and stories, took an unexpected left turn because one furry, knobbly-kneed navigator partied a little too hard on spoiled dates. You probably won't survive this, by the way. The sand alone is enough to exfoliate your skin down to memory. Add heat, treachery, bandits, and a historically inebriated beast, and yeah, it's all very glamorously lethal. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where we're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're about a week into your caravan journey when the trouble starts. The camels, bless their moody souls, usually grumble but obey. Except for one, a shaggy, sand-colored hulk with a lopsided saddle and a glint of chaos in his eye. You call him Grumble. He seems offended by water, allergic to authority, and, unfortunately, utterly obsessed with the strange fermented mash the merchants packed for emergencies. You know, emergencies like forgetting how to blink or speaking in ancient Sogdian. At the oasis of Bokhara, under stars brighter than your future, Grumble breaks into the supply tent. By morning, he's reeking of date wine, staggering in wide loops, and actively resisting all attempts to redirect him. You swear he's humming. Then, without warning, he bolts. Not toward danger or food. No. He heads into the Tian Shan foothills. The traders yell. You chase. And suddenly, just like that, you're off the Silk Road. Now, you'd think your group would wrangle him back, but there's a weird moment of groupthink, or maybe group exhaustion. A kind of collective shrug. The heat's brutal, the trade winds are fickle, and honestly, there's something oddly purposeful about Grumble's path. So, you follow. This detour? Historians still argue whether it was accidental, strategic, or orchestrated by long-lost mountain tribes with a thing for psychological camel warfare. The terrain changes quickly. You leave the relative comfort of caravanserais behind, those square-walled desert motels with their warm lentil stew and sarcastic gatekeepers. Here, the sand is fine as flour and shifts under your feet like it's alive. The mountain air smells like crushed pine needles and forgotten stories. It's on day 3 of your new path when the camel does it again. Another wobble, another misstep, and this time, the saddlebag rips. Out tumbles something odd. Not a trinket or a scroll of price lists, but a water-damaged parchment rolled in dyed wool. You peel it open carefully. It smells of citrus, ink, and a hint of regret. The symbols are unfamiliar at first, curved lines, looping diagrams, something that looks suspiciously like a drunken flamingo. But gradually you notice words inked in old Sogdian script. Roughly translated, Path of Cinnamon and Star Teeth, which is either a children's riddle or a lost caravan detour known only to a fringe network of ancient traders and very adventurous camels. A mainstream fact for you, the Silk Roads weren't one single road. They were a messy, interwoven sprawl of shifting routes stretching from China to the Mediterranean, changing with every political upheaval, plague outbreak, or seasonal flood. So the idea of a secret detour isn't so far-fetched. But here's the fringe tidbit. Camel handlers believed some beasts had memories not of their lives, but of their ancestors. As if Grumble here might be tapping into a DNA-encoded trade path from centuries back. Which is probably nonsense. Probably. You huddle with your fellow travelers that night. Some want to head back, but others, mostly the ones who like adventure, and those with gambling debts, vote to follow the detour. It's not logical. It's not even advisable. But something about this camel's odd determination feels important. Like history, mischief, and fermented fruit have converged for a reason. You fall asleep on the sand that night with the scroll under your head and Grumble snoring nearby, his breath thick with the fumes of spoiled apricot. The stars above twinkle with what might be ancient laughter. In the morning, the detour truly begins. The morning greets you with a breeze sharp enough to slap sense into a scorpion, but Grumble is unfazed. He rises with a grunt, stares into the dusty hills ahead, and begins walking like a monk on pilgrimage, if that monk had a hangover and 3 bad knees. You scramble to gather your gear, roll up the soggy scroll with reverence, and catch up. The path narrows quickly. Gone are the well-worn caravan tracks and carved roadside markers shaped like lions or lotus flowers. Here, the earth is baked and cracked, overgrown with stubby shrubs that poke at your ankles and seem to whisper, "You don't belong here." Grumble trudges on, occasionally hiccuping in rhythm. Around midday, the trail bends past a crumbling ridge. That's when you find the well. Not just any well, this one's wrapped in faded blue cloths, prayer flags perhaps, and ringed with smooth stones that form symbols only half recognizable. You lower a bucket. The water smells faintly of mint and something metallic. Grumble drinks greedily and then, like he's been waiting, sits hard. You hear a squish. You sigh. Tucked beneath him is a second scrap of parchment. How it got there, no one knows. Maybe the wind. Maybe fate. Or maybe camels really are the desert's drunk philosophers. This piece isn't a map. It's a fragment of a poem, talking about a serpent path where silk sings and merchants who vanish with snow. The vibe? Ominous. Historians still argue whether such scroll fragments were trade route clues, coded rituals, or just badly translated travel reviews. But one thing's certain, you've stumbled into a legend. That night, you set camp near a jagged outcrop shaped like a curled finger. The fire crackles low as a nearby merchant, Azim, a storyteller with too many earrings, leans close and says he's heard of this route before. The Cinnamon Crescent, he whispers. A path used by caravans when emperors fell, and main roads filled with thieves. It's said only those who follow a mad beast can find it. You look over at Grumble. He's rolling in the dust like a rug being beaten for fleas. You ask Azim what lies ahead. He shakes his head. Rivers that flow backward. Hills that echo your thoughts. And a temple guarded by silence itself. Reassuring. But here's the kicker. The scroll from the saddlebag? Once dry, it reveals more than just cryptic poetry. Pressed into the parchment is a watermark, an imperial seal from a long-defunct Sogdian outpost known for its role in the silk-salt-fur triangle of trade. That place vanished from records centuries ago, possibly buried by landslides or rebranded as a summer home for Mongol warlords. No one knows. The idea of finding a link to a forgotten trade hub electrifies the group. This isn't just camel chaos anymore, this is history calling. The next few days blur in sand and sweat. You hike switchbacks so steep they make your shins file complaints. You cross a rickety rope bridge while Grumble struts across like it's a red carpet. You see birds you can't name and a cloud shaped like Confucius doing jazz hands. Then comes the cave. It's tucked behind a tumble of rocks, half hidden, marked with the same spiral symbols found on the scroll. Inside, it's cool, silent, and full of dust motes dancing like ancient fireflies. You move deeper and find an alcove carved with niches. Inside each, tiny bundles wrapped in silk and dried flowers. Offerings? Messages? Hard to say. But there's one thing unmistakable, a leather pouch hanging on a peg. Inside? A brutal parchment map that looks remarkably similar to the modern ones scholars argue over, but with one key difference. This version includes a detour route through the Tian Shan range, marked in red ink. That same route Grumble has led you into. Fringe theory time. Some researchers claim that camels were intentionally trained over generations to know these detours, acting as walking GPS devices whose instincts could override human caution. Critics call it fantasy. But after watching Grumble sniff out a hidden cave, you're less sure. That night, as you lay wrapped in a blanket smelling faintly of dried yak, you can't sleep. The detour isn't just real. It's documented. Maybe buried, erased, or just too inconvenient for mainstream historians to bother with. But it was here. Used. Revered. Lost. And now, rediscovered. You look up. The stars shimmer like old coins in a fountain. You wonder how many others, led by tipsy beasts or desperate hopes, followed this same path. Grumble lets out a long, slow snore, ending with what sounds suspiciously like a chuckle. You wake to the smell of burned millet and someone's foot in your ribs. Morning on the detour doesn't come gently, it slaps you with cold mountain air and a sun that beams like it's got something to prove. Grumble is already up, of course, chewing on something that might once have been a shoe. The others stir slowly, stiff from sleeping on rock, cloth, and whatever existential dread they packed. You move out by midday, the caravan winding higher into the Tian Shan foothills, the path thinning to something that barely qualifies as a trail. The silence up here is strange. It's not empty, just listening. Even the bells on the camels seem muffled. By late afternoon, you spotted a cluster of whitewashed buildings with green-tiled roofs clinging to the hillside like barnacles. A monastery. Not on any modern map. The moment you cross into its shadow, everything feels warmer, safer. Your boots finally hit flagstone instead of pebbled scree, and a breath you didn't know you were holding escapes. A robed figure approaches. His smile is knowing, his steps silent. He introduces himself as Brother Wen and offers you rice porridge with pickled plums. You accept, because it's that or more dry camel jerky. Inside the dining hall, murals line the walls, depictions of trade caravans, dancing spirits, and a curious repeating motif, a drunken camel with stars on its hump. You don't say anything at first. You just stare. Brother Wen notices. "Ah," he says, "the path of grumble." He doesn't even flinch. The monastery, he explains, was once a sanctuary for traveling monks and rogue traders who strayed from the official Silk Road, by accident or by design. They called it the back thread, like a hidden stitch holding the fabric of commerce together. Mainstream fact: Buddhist monks often traveled alongside merchants, sharing space in caravans and establishing waypoints that became cultural bridges. Some monasteries even became informal trading hubs, where ideas moved faster than silk. Fringe tidbit: this particular monastery kept a ledger, not of trade goods, but of travelers' dreams. According to Brother Wen, the monks believed the true value of the road wasn't what you carried on your back, but what you carried in your sleep. They'd record snippets, saw tiger made of steam, spoke with ancestor in bowl of soup, camel recited poetry. You ask if the detour is safe. Brother Wen pauses. Safe, he echoes. No. But meaningful? Yes. That's when a different monk enters, an older man with a shaved head and mischievous eyes. He slams down a wooden tablet with an ink drawing. It shows your route so far, including the exact cave you found the map in. You ask how he got that. He smiles. We dream of those who walk the thread. Nope. Not creepy at all. Historians still argue whether such dream-encoded maps were real, metaphorical, or simply embroidered tales passed between bored monks and drunk traders. But you're beginning to feel like metaphor has some bite. That night, you're invited to a meditation session, but it's less chanting, more storytelling. The monks take turns narrating tales of lost merchants, ancient routes, and once, memorably, a diplomat who insulted a warlord by using the wrong kind of noodle in his gift stew. You lean back, sipping warm spiced tea, the stars outside draped like velvet. A monk beside you mumbles, "Sometimes, history is drunker than we remember." And then, as if on cue, Grumble trots into the hall, hiccups, and sits directly on a prayer mat. No one bats an eye. Brother Wen approaches once more and offers you something wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, a scroll with a crude map, annotated with celestial references. It doesn't replace the torn one from Grumble's saddlebag, but it does seem to confirm its direction. You ask him why he's giving it to you. He simply says, "Because we have no camels." You, clearly, have a very good one. A few of your fellow travelers, including Azim the ear-ringed gambler, decide to stay behind. Maybe the warm rice porridge finally wore them down. Maybe they're looking for meaning too. But you? You wake the next morning, tie your sash, and tighten your boots. Grumble is waiting, staring down the next ridge like it owes him money. As you mount up, Brother Wen bows low. "Trust the wrong turns," he says. "They remember more than you do." You set out, the monastery shrinking behind you, your map tucked in your cloak, and the sky ahead bluer than seems possible. Grumble farts, and for once, it smells like purpose. You descend from the monastery with fresh supplies, a new map, and a vague sense that reality might be wearing very thin socks. The path carves through a narrow valley now, hugged on both sides by cliffs streaked with minerals that shimmer under the sun like dragon scales. You see no other caravans, no footprints ahead, just the wind painting little dunes across your boots and Grumble's occasional snort like a disgruntled kettle. Azim might have stayed behind with the monks, but the group isn't short on characters. There's Sara, the weather-worn botanist convinced she'll find a legendary herb that grows only where 3 empires forgot to exist. Then there's Tenzin, who only speaks when he's absolutely certain what he says will make people question their life choices. And you, of course, somewhere between curious and hopelessly lost. It's Sara who first notices the change in scent, cinnamon. Not the light whiff you might expect from a bakery, but thick, cloying, suspiciously intense. Like the desert itself is sweating spice. You round a bend and there it is, a bazaar. In the middle of absolutely nowhere. Tents patched with silks from at least 3 dynasties. Traders in layered robes, sitting cross-legged with trays of saffron, glass beads, and, you guessed it, sticks of curled cinnamon bark, stacked like firewood. There are no roads, no walls, no obvious water source. Just the bazaar, pulsing with quiet urgency like a heartbeat skipped in the desert. You tether Grumble, who immediately tries to barter with the goat for a handful of fermented prunes, and step inside. Mainstream historical fact, spice bazaars often popped up temporarily along the Silk Roads, especially in disputed or tax-heavy areas. Traders would organize short-term markets in neutral zones to avoid imperial tariffs. This one feels more than temporary. It feels hidden. Traders nod as if they know you, which is disconcerting. One offers you a clay cup of something hot and sharp, insists you drink. You do. It tastes like peppered honey and regret. Then comes the monk. Not a monk, the monk. Same robes as Brother One's order, but this guy is younger, sharper, and armed with what looks suspiciously like an attitude. You shouldn't be here, he says, chewing a date pit. Which means you're exactly where you need to be. He introduces himself as Brother Fei, and says he came here following a legend about a map stolen from a Tang Dynasty courier. That courier, apparently, carried a sealed imperial decree, one that approved an alternative route through the Tianshan. Fei thinks the map was stolen at this very bazaar. He's been here 5 months trying to trace it. You show him the scroll from Grumble's saddlebag. He stares, then laughs. Drunken Camel, huh? Figures. Fei believes the Detour was once an official secret route, used only during emergencies, plagues, rebellions, or diplomatic meltdowns. Over time, it faded into myth, buried under sand and bureaucracy. He offers to help decode your scroll in exchange for passage with your caravan. You agree, mostly because anyone fluent in obscure Tang slang is worth keeping close. But not everyone's pleased. A man with a veiled face follows you through the market. He wears no insignia, but his belt has an imperial buckle, and he's watching Fei like a hawk wearing spectacles. Sara confronts him. You're either lost or looking for trouble. He replies, I am looking for a stolen map. Oh. You don't wait around. That night, Fei deciphers more of the scroll using ink made from charred almond skins. Under moonlight, the text glows faintly purple. You learn of the Mouthless Pass, a narrow trail with carved markers in a forgotten script, and something called the Singer's Gate. Historians still argue whether the Singer's Gate was a mountain pass, a temple, or just metaphor for death, soothing. But Fei's face goes pale when he reads it. We'll need to travel light, he says. And fast. The next morning, the bazaar is gone. Not packed up. Gone. Even the cinnamon-scented sand has been scuffed away. No footprints. No stalls. Just Grumble, still chewing a tent pole like he's surprised it's not food. Sara thinks it was a mirage. Fei says it was real, just selective. Tenzin shrugs and mutters, reality is cooperative, not consistent. That's when you discover your saddlebag's been tampered with. Nothing stolen, something added. A slip of cloth. Imperial red. And on it, a symbol, a camel with one eye closed and a single word below, inked in faded gold. Detour. You don't sleep that night. Not really. The sand is too quiet, the stars too bright, and that red slip of cloth tucked in your saddlebag feels heavier than it should. You keep checking your gear, nothing else was touched. No food missing. No scrolls swapped. Just the cryptic mark of a closed-eye camel and the word Detour, as if someone, or something, wanted you to know you're on the wrong path. By dawn, Fei's up and pacing. We're not the only ones following this route, he says, voice low. But I don't think anyone else has that scroll. He nods toward Grumble, who's trying to roll down a slope like a fuzzy boulder. Or a creature that clearly communes with ancient ghosts. The terrain shifts again, less sand, more grass tufts and stone outcroppings, the altitude climbing in every breath. The sun sharpens. Your group moves quieter now, as if expecting something. The air smells of wild herbs and ozone, like lightnings waiting in the soil. It's around midday that you hear the cry. Sharp, high, whistling. Not human. You look up and see it. A falcon. Not just any falcon. This one is white with golden feathers along its wings and something glinting on its leg. It dives past you, close enough to stir your hair, then circles and lands on a crooked tree that looks more fossil than flora. Sarah gasps. It's wearing jewelry. You climb up slowly, bare branches scratching your arms, and get close enough to see it, a gold ring clasped to the falcon's leg, engraved with a looping pattern. Faye freezes. That's Imperial, he mutters. Tang Dynasty. High Court. And it's not just a ring, that's a seal. He's right. It's small, but unmistakable, the seal of the Minister of Routes and Records, stamped with the mark of Chang'an's bureaucracy. The falcon? It's a messenger bird. Or was, at least. Now it just looks vaguely judgmental. Faye gently removes the seal. Tied beneath it with silk thread is a square of parchment no bigger than your palm. It reads, Crescent Path confirmed. Avoid the mouthless. South Slope holds the Singer's teeth. Historians still argue what Singer's teeth refers to. Could be rock formations shaped like teeth, a ruined temple, or even a reference to coded chimes used to mark safe trail points in ancient times. There's evidence, though scant, that some traders used sound, bells, wind harps, to guide them through foggy passes. You pocket the seal and offer the falcon a strip of jerky. It takes it, then flaps off toward the southern sky like it has errands to run and no time for your existential unraveling. The team regroups. Tenzin marks the south slope on the new map. If this is a detour, he says, then it's not just avoiding danger. It's offering something else. A shortcut, maybe. Or a secret. The air gets thinner as you climb, the wind crueler. At one point, a gust snatches Sarah's hat and flings it into a ravine. She just sighs and mutters, the desert takes what it wants. Then comes the ridge. You crest it around dusk and find yourself staring down at a valley carpeted in gold. Not treasure, flowers. Tens of thousands of golden desert blooms, all waving in the wind like a choreographed welcome. In the middle stands a black stone obelisk. On it, a carving of a falcon mid-dive and that same seal you just found. Grumble lets out a burp. Maybe approval. The obelisk bears no text, but small holes carved near its top catch the wind, and suddenly, the valley sings. Low, hollow tones like pan flutes or distant voices. The air becomes music. Tenzin calls it the Singer's Gate. Faye disagrees. This isn't the gate. This is the warning. You camp in the valley that night, surrounded by ghostly humming. No one sleeps much. And then, just before dawn, something even stranger happens. Sarah, scribbling in her journal, notices her ink moving oddly, curling backward in her strokes. You test your compass. It spins. Faye drops a dried fig and watches it roll uphill. The valley isn't just beautiful, it's distorted. It warps direction, magnetism, maybe even time. Fringe theory alert, certain Silk Road detours were said to pass through thin places, spots where the veil between worlds, or eras, thinned. Places where the laws of nature played hopscotch. Most historians dismiss it. Some whisper about it. You're currently camping in it. By morning, the flowers have closed. The wind has stopped, and the path down the south slope glows faintly under the morning sun. The falcon's message was right. This route is real, and someone went to a lot of trouble to hide it. You begin the descent along the south slope, legs stiff, eyes scanning the earth for any more cryptic bird mail or, let's be honest, unexplained physics anomalies. The flowers of the valley shrink behind you, golden heads bowing as if bidding farewell, or giving one last creepy warning. The humming stones fall silent. For a moment, the silence feels earned. Peaceful. But that doesn't last. Grumble, naturally, is the first to hesitate. He stops mid-step, neck craning toward a boulder-strewn outcrop about 50 paces down. His ears flick. He grunts. And then he takes an exaggerated step backward. Everyone else halts too. You look ahead and, yes, there they are. Marmots. You've seen marmots before. Chubby, whistling bird dwellers. Kind of cute, like oversized prairie dogs with dental issues. But these? These are huge. As in, small dog-sized. One of them stands upright on a rock like it's the lookout. Another is gnawing what appears to be a piece of embroidered saddlecloth. Tenzin narrows his eyes. Those aren't wild. He's right. These marmots have gear, makeshift harnesses, collars with beads, even little leather pouches slung across their backs. You're staring at a trained marmot colony, and they do not want you passing through. Sarah gasps. I've read about this. In a footnote. caravanners used to breed mountain marmots to carry messages or sniff out herbs. But some were left behind, went feral, started guarding old supply caches. Mainstream fact, animals like pigeons, falcons, and even mongooses were used along Silk Road routes. There are isolated records of marmots being semi-domesticated by Tibetan traders, usually for messages or warning whistles, not guerrilla checkpoint duty. Fringe tidbit? One long-dismissed diary from a Mongol scout describes guard marmots trained to defend a hidden store of saffron and jade by attacking anything that smelled like camel. So, you're in trouble. Grumble, in his infinite wisdom, decides now is the time to sneeze violently and charge forward. The marmots react like a furry SWAT team. The lookout whistles, 3 others scamper in formation, and within seconds, your lead camel is surrounded by squeaking, teeth-chattering, aggressively rotund fluffballs. Faye leaps into action. Nobody move! Don't look them in the eyes. Tenzin immediately looks one in the eyes. It hisses. A standoff unfolds. You versus marmots. Camel versus marmot leader, who now perches atop a boulder like a tiny warlord. Then something bizarre happens. The leader marmot squeaks. Another runs into a nearby burrow. It returns with a scroll. An actual, silk-wrapped scroll. Grumble, fascinated, extends his nose to sniff it. The marmot slaps his snout. Grumble doesn't flinch. Instead, he carefully sits. Like he's negotiating. No, really. You step forward slowly, palms up. Hey little guy, you whisper. We're just trying to pass through. We're not here to steal your jade. Or your snacks. The leader squeaks again. Faye, still frozen, whispers, offer them something. You reach into your pack. Dried apricots. A worn silk ribbon. A bronze charm shaped like a gourd. You lay them on a flat rock and back away. The marmot leader waddles up, inspects the items, picks the charm, and squeaks in what you hope is approval. The marmots back off. Slowly. Tactically. Like small, judgmental mercenaries. You retrieve the scroll. It's old but sealed with wax. Faye examines the seal and exhales. Same as the falcon's ring. We're not just following the route, we're collecting its dead drops. The scroll is a trader's log. Dated 752 CE. It lists spice quantities, travel notes, and a sketch of a mountain formation labeled Singer's Teeth. But the final line is what stops your breath. Avoid the mouthless pass. Those who speak there are never heard again. Now that's comforting. You thank the marmots, because politeness, and press on. As the path narrows into switchbacks, you take stock of where you are. You're definitely off any known map. The elevation's rising, but the temperature's steady. The land here is lush, strange, full of herbs Sara nearly weeps over. And carved into the rocks, so faint you have to squint, are pictograms of camels, flowers, and falcons. Some seem to move when the light hits just right. Faye thinks they're warnings. Tenzin thinks they're guides. Grumble licks one. Historians still argue whether such carvings were trail markers, spirit charms, or just very bored shepherds expressing themselves. You suspect all 3. As the sun dips behind a jagged ridge, you find a natural overhang for camp. The wind whistles in the rocks like a flute. Grumble curls up, his breath slow and even, finally spent from diplomatic negotiations with rodents. That night, the stars hang so close you feel like you could grab one. The silence is thick, humming with what came before. You lie awake thinking about marmots with scrolls and falcons with jewelry and a path too old to be remembered, but somehow, you're still walking it. You whisper to the night, unsure who's listening. And somewhere far off, something chirps back. You wake to frost on your blanket and the unsettling realization that Grumble is already halfway up the ridge without you. Typical. The camel seems to thrive in chaos. Or maybe he is the chaos. Either way, you scramble to catch up, your boots crunching over gravel that sparkles with morning ice. Sara mutters about the altitude, and Faye is already squinting at the mountain skyline like it's a riddle in need of punching. The trail climbs fast. Thin air. Sharp light. Shadows stretch like stories. You're high enough now that the clouds seem to drift beneath you. There's no denying it, you've left the world most people know behind. Then you see it, a worn stone stele, tilted slightly, bearing a single carved symbol. A camel. Standing on stars. Faye breathes, the sky camel. He says it like a punchline. You glance at Tenzin, who just raises an eyebrow. Sarah, on the other hand, goes full academic. It's a local myth, she says, already unrolling a notebook. There's a whole constellation in some Central Asian star maps shaped like a celestial camel, supposedly guides souls or traders. Sometimes it drinks the Milky Way. Sometimes it is the Milky Way. Mainstream fact, ancient Silk Road travelers did use the stars for navigation, especially constellations like Ursa Major or Orion's Belt. But regional folklore gave rise to more esoteric symbols, like the sky camel, found in Sogdian, Uyghur, and even Persian sources. Fringe theory? Some believe that certain routes on the Silk Roads mirrored the stars, like reverse constellations etched into the earth. Road builders might have mapped trails based on cosmic alignments rather than terrain logic. Historians still argue whether this was practical, spiritual, or sheer coincidence. You stare at the symbol. It's not a random carving. It's a signpost. And as you follow the trail upward, the steel seems to glow. Just a trick of the light, you tell yourself. Probably. The path soon levels into a high alpine plateau. Snow crunches underfoot in patches, and every breath tastes like silver. You see no towns, no ruins. Just one wide field, and a ring of stones. Tenzin murmurs, "This is a sky altar." You ask him how he knows. He shrugs. "I was born weird." Faye kneels beside the ring, brushing snow away to reveal more symbols, camels, stars, flowers, even a flute. These weren't just traders. They were stargazers. The detour might have been chosen to align with certain celestial events. Sarah gasps and points up. The moon is out, pale against the morning sky. And next to it, a bright star. Unusually bright. It pulses. Then disappears. You all fall quiet. "Okay," you say, "someone please tell me we're not on a cosmic treasure hunt designed by desert astrologers and tipsy pack animals." No one answers. The air hums slightly, like distant bells in the bone. You take a break by a frozen stream. Grumble slurps at the ice and spits it out dramatically. You nibble on dried plums and stare at the clouds rolling below, trying to reconcile the modern world with this wild ancient mystery. Faye joins you and taps the scroll you've all been following. What if this wasn't just a trade route? What if it was a ritual path? A kind of pilgrimage disguised as commerce? He might be right. The goods, the maps, the seals, they're real. But the symbols, the dreams, the falcons, the strange behaviors of weather and marmots in time, it's all starting to feel like something more. That night, you make camp inside the ring of stones. No one speaks for hours. The stars emerge, so many, so bright, it's as if the sky is leaning closer. Then, just before sleep, Grumble groans and plops down in the exact center of the circle. You blink. Above him, a streak of light cuts across the heavens. A meteor? A sign? You watch the camel, now snoring softly, and wonder if he's dreaming about star paths, or just fermented fruit again. Either way, he's still leading. And you're still following. After the celestial spectacle, you wake feeling lighter, as if some invisible weight lifted during the night. The air is crisp and clean, almost too pure, like it's been filtered through a mountain spring untouched for centuries. The stone ring glints faintly in the dawn light, the carvings seeming to breathe with you. You pack up slowly, there's no rush in a place where time itself feels suspended, and prepare to move on. The path narrows again, squeezing between jagged cliffs where shadows play tricks and the wind whistles tunes that sound eerily like distant flutes. You notice strange markings on the rocks, tiny symbols that seem to shift if you look away, like the mountains themselves are alive with secrets. Sarah is the first to spot it, an ancient guestbook carved into the stone. Its ink was invisible to the naked eye, but when you apply lemon juice, thank you, modern chemistry and desert survival hacks, faint handwriting emerges, faded but legible. The guestbook chronicles caravans who took this detour centuries ago, names, dates, even tiny doodles of camels with crossed legs and teacups. One entry reads, "Passed safely thanks to the wind spirits. Tea always brewed strong." Another warns, "Beware the silent watchmen of the pass." You shiver, half from cold and half from unease. Brother Faye nods gravely. This is proof. The detour wasn't just legend, it was used, often covertly. Travelers left these marks as a secret handshake. He gestures to a symbol repeated throughout, a stylized tea leaf beside a crescent moon. Mainstream historical fact, tea was more than just a drink on the Silk Roads, it was currency, medicine, even a diplomatic gift. Some remote routes reportedly had tea stations where merchants could barter for fresh supplies, stories, and warnings. Fringe tidbit: there are whispers of invisible ink guestbooks scattered across old routes, used to communicate secret information without alerting hostile eyes. Historians still argue whether these were practical tools or just caravanners' campfire games. As you press forward, the terrain grows wilder. Cracks in the cliffs form natural tunnels, where echoes bounce and water drips in unpredictable rhythms. You step cautiously, the scent of damp earth mingling with crushed pine and a hint of something floral, almost intoxicating. Suddenly, a faint sound catches your attention. A doorbell? Impossible here, but there it is again, a melodic chime carried by the wind, clear and deliberate. You follow it to a small outcropping, where ancient wooden panels hang suspended like forgotten sentinels. The doorbells, attached to carved ropes, tinkle softly when the breeze stirs. You try one. The sound reverberates through the canyon like a whispered secret. Brother Wind's stories from the monastery echo in your mind. These bells might have been signals, warnings, or even a form of mystical communication between isolated stops along the detour. You linger here, sipping tea brewed from wild herbs Sarah identifies as rare and potent, feeling the weight of history settle around you. The detour isn't just a route, it's a living archive, a path layered with mystery, guarded by sound and silence alike. As the sun sets behind the cliffs, painting the sky in bruised purples and fiery oranges, you prepare to leave this secret chapel of echoes behind. But somewhere, beneath the laughter of distant marmots and the snoring of a very tired camel, you realize the detour's greatest secret might still be ahead. As you press onward, the landscape opens into what you might expect of a ghost town, crumbling stone walls leaning precariously, half swallowed by vines that bloom stubbornly with wildflowers. The silence here is so thick, it feels like the air itself holds its breath. But as you step carefully through the ruins, you notice something peculiar, faint echoes of sound, like distant footsteps or soft murmurs, even though no one else is around. Your boots disturb a patch of dust that flutters like tiny ghosts, and Grumble snorts awake from his nap under a cracked archway. The sun hangs low, casting long shadows that stretch and twist like ancient fingers across broken rooftops. Suddenly, a door creaks. Not a rotten, falling apart door, but one that sounds functional. You freeze. Around you, the town feels less abandoned and more waiting. Following the sound, you find a small building with a door that swings open at your touch. Inside is surprisingly neat, a dusty wooden table, a cracked teapot still warm to the touch, and, on the wall, faded paintings of camels and stars, eerily reminiscent of the symbols you've seen all along the detour. Before you can process this, a voice calls out softly, "Visitors?" You jump. From behind a curtain steps an elderly woman with eyes bright as polished amber. She smiles warmly, motioning you inside. "This town is a mirage," she says quietly, "or at least, it was meant to be. For travelers who get lost, or perhaps for those who need to be found." You realize this ghost town isn't entirely empty. A handful of people live here, hidden from the main roads, guarding the secrets of the detour. She tells you stories of merchants who vanished, not to bandits or sandstorms, but into the town's folds. Some say the town is caught between times, sometimes present, sometimes past, sometimes nowhere at all. Historians still argue whether such shifting towns existed or if they're caravan legends born from tales told around campfires to keep children close. Fringe tidbit? Some accounts mention working doorbells and mysterious lights appearing and disappearing, believed to be the town's way of protecting its guests from harm or inviting only the worthy. You spend the night with the villagers, sharing stories over bitter tea and sweet dates. They warn you that the detour is watched, not just by marmots and monks, but by shadows of the past that refuse to fade. In the early morning, you step back onto the trail, the ghost town fading behind you like a dream slipping away at dawn. Grumble stretches and bellows a hiccup that sounds suspiciously like laughter. You're beginning to understand. This detour isn't just a path. It's a living story. The morning light spills unevenly over your camp as you adjust your saddlebag, eyes still flickering with images from the ghost town. Grumble, ever the diva, demands his breakfast in a series of disgruntled grunts, which you translate loosely as more fermented figs, please. You press on, descending toward lower altitudes where the air feels thicker, heavier, like the history in this place has weight you can almost touch. Around midday, the landscape flattens into an expanse of rolling hills dotted with scraggly bushes and the faint shimmer of distant lakes. Then, you stumble on a curious relic, shards of pottery painted with Byzantine motifs, rich blues and golds, almost impossibly vibrant after all this time. Nearby, a weathered stone slab bears an inscription in Greek letters, half erased but still readable. Sarah leans in, brushing away dust. This means someone from the Byzantine Empire once passed through here, she says, eyes wide. Mainstream fact. The Silk Roads connected not only East Asia and the Middle East but also stretched toward the Byzantine Empire, where silk was highly prized and carefully guarded. Trade often involved elaborate diplomatic exchanges and secretive smuggling routes. But here's the fringe twist. Local folklore speaks of a diplomatic dinner gone disastrously wrong. A Byzantine envoy, sent to secure trade rights, apparently insulted a local warlord, not by weapons or words, but by bringing the wrong kind of soup. The story goes that the envoy served lentil soup instead of the traditional bean stew, which was considered a grave offense. This culinary blunder supposedly triggered a cascade of events leading to a sudden shift in trade routes, possibly including the detour you're following. Historians still debate whether this story is fact, fiction, or a creative way to explain complex political changes. But there's something deliciously absurd about the idea that a bowl of soup could reroute entire economies. You find yourself chuckling despite the desert heat. The path twists toward a river valley, where water rushes over smooth stones and dragonflies dart like living jewels. You pause to refill your water skins and notice ancient carvings near the banks, flames licking at stone, eternal fire motifs common in Zoroastrianism. Brother Fay examines the carvings thoughtfully. The eternal fire represents purity, protection. It suggests this detour was sacred, not just practical. You wonder if traders carried offerings here, or if the route doubled as a pilgrimage path. Your group camps near the river that night, the firelight dancing over the carved stones. You drift to sleep thinking about diplomats, soup faux pas, and fires that never die. Grumble, however, dreams of something entirely different, fermented figs and slightly less judgmental humans. The next morning, you rise to the smell of smoldering wood and the faint tang of incense carried on the breeze. The river's chatter accompanies your steps as you move downstream, the terrain shifting into gentle hills where poplars sway and wildflowers nod their heads like knowing sages. It feels almost peaceful, if you ignore the fact that you're following a detour supposedly charted by a drunken camel and protected by marmots. Then, tucked between two ancient oaks, you spot it, a small fire pit, still warm. Nearby, a carved stone marker bears a flame symbol, unmistakably Zoroastrian, the religion of fire worshippers who once ruled vast stretches of Central Asia. Faye steps forward reverently. This flame never goes out, he says. It's a beacon, a sacred light guiding travelers. You think about that, how a flicker of fire, tending patiently through centuries, might have been the quiet heart of this detour. Mainstream historical fact. Zoroastrian fire temples were crucial in ancient Persia and along trade routes, serving as spiritual waypoints and places of refuge. Some flames were maintained continuously for hundreds of years. Fringe tidbit, a few caravan journals mention ghost flames that flicker without fuel, said to be the spirits of lost merchants watching over the road. Historians debate whether this was metaphor or mysterious natural phenomena. As you press on, the air grows cooler, the landscape shifting again, wild mulberry trees lining the path, their leaves rustling softly. Mulberries, you recall from your reading, are essential for silk production. The detour might have been a hidden silk smuggling corridor. Suddenly, Sarah stops, eyes wide. Beneath a thick mulberry canopy, she finds a skeleton draped in faded trader's robes, clutching a rusted dagger and a small pouch of mulberry leaves. The group falls silent. The detour's dangers are real. Smugglers, bandits, or worse may have lurked here. Faye gently closes the pouch, whispering a prayer. You wonder how many lives were traded for the silk and secrets carried along this shadowy path. The sun dips low as you set up camp, the Zoroastrian fire marker glowing faintly in the distance like a watchful guardian. Grumble snorts, apparently unimpressed by spiritual symbolism but very interested in your last ration of dried apricots. You lie awake considering the cost of trade, not just goods, but blood, faith, and sacrifice. The detour isn't just a route, it's a story written in flame and bone. You rise before dawn, the cold creeping into your bones like a slow, unwelcome visitor. The detour has become a tapestry woven with stories and scents, burning wood, mulberry leaves, distant spices, and you're now part of it, whether you like it or not. Today, The path takes you through a narrow valley where the trees seem to lean in, whispering secrets you almost catch but can't quite hold. In the valley's heart, you come across a small stone hut with smoke curling from its chimney. Inside, a fire crackles gently, and an elderly woman sits rolling flatbreads. She invites you in, offering warm bread filled with honey and sesame. It's the first comfort food you've tasted in days, and you savor each crumb. As you eat, the woman shares stories passed down from her ancestors, tales of pancake diplomacy, where local lords would bake treaties into flatbreads and share them over fires to seal alliances. It's an odd but fascinating form of political maneuvering, mixing flour with fragile peace. Mainstream fact: throughout history, food has often played a crucial role in diplomacy, symbolizing trust and cooperation. Treaties signed over meals weren't just about politics but building relationships. Fringe tidbit: some scholars suggest that certain Silk Road treaties were literally edible, crafted into special pastries that could be consumed to signify agreement, though whether this was widespread or symbolic remains debated. You chuckle at the thought of negotiating peace through breakfast foods, imagining emperors biting into flaky packs and crumbs falling onto velvet robes. Faye examines the flatbreads carefully, noting small markings baked into the crust, symbols that mirror those you've seen carved into rocks and scrolls. The idea that diplomacy might have been baked, rolled, and consumed here adds another layer of mystery to the detour. You leave the hut feeling nourished, not just physically, but in spirit. The detour isn't just a path of hardship, it's also a road of connection and creativity, where survival depended as much on cleverness and kindness as on trade goods. Grumble wanders off, probably in search of something to chew that's less political and more edible. As the sun climbs, you press onward, ready for whatever oddities this detour might throw next. The sun rides high as you enter a dense grove of mulberry trees, their leaves rustling softly like whispered secrets. The air is thick with the sweet scent of ripe fruit and the faint hum of silkworms, invisible but industrious, weaving their magic among the branches. Sora's eyes light up. This is no ordinary grove. It's a hidden silk production site, long abandoned but still breathing with echoes of ancient industry. You tread carefully, mindful of the brittle twigs and hidden roots. Suddenly, your foot strikes something hard. Kneeling, you uncover a skull, nestled among a tangle of dried leaves and broken silk cocoons. Its hollow eyes seem to stare accusingly, a silent testament to a forgotten trader or perhaps a smuggler who paid the ultimate price. Faye examines the scene quietly. Silk piracy was real, he murmurs. Smugglers used secret routes like this detour to bypass imperial controls, but it was dangerous. Many never made it back. Historians still argue about the scale of silk smuggling along these backroads. Was it a minor nuisance or a shadow empire of traders operating beyond the law? Fringe tidbits suggest some smugglers used elaborate disguises and hidden compartments in goods as small as tea bricks or as large as camel saddles. The grove feels haunted. You find old tools, spindles, broken looms, and tangled silk threads glinting faintly in the dappled light. It's a bittersweet discovery, a reminder that this detour was more than just a trade path. It was a lifeline for those who operated in the shadows. As you press onward, you hear a soft melody carried on the wind, a haunting tune played on an oud, drifting from a nearby cave. You follow it cautiously and find a blind musician seated on a rock, fingers dancing across strings with effortless grace. His eyes are closed, but his smile is warm as he nods to you. He tells you that his family has mapped the detour through generations of songs, each note a step, each melody a marker. The path is etched not only in stone and scroll but in music and memory. Mainstream fact: oral traditions, including music and storytelling, were vital in preserving knowledge along the Silk Roads, especially in cultures with limited written records. Fringe theory suggests that certain melodies functioned as mnemonic devices, encoding complex navigation instructions disguised as beautiful tunes. Historians debate how widespread and reliable these methods were. You listen, entranced, feeling the detour's history resonate not just beneath your feet, but in the very air around you. Grumble hums along, albeit slightly off-key. The melody lingers as you leave the musician behind, the notes still threading through the valley's cool air. Grumble, surprisingly attentive, matches a rhythmic hiccup to the tune, much to your amused disbelief. As you follow the winding trail upward, the landscape shifts again, jagged rocks interspersed with patches of snow, the air thinner and colder. You can almost taste the altitude in every breath. Then, suddenly, the path narrows into a rocky pass marked by weathered wooden posts, each carved with enigmatic symbols. One post bears a crudely painted sign, "The Great Camel Uprising of 1041. You pause, eyebrows raised. Faye chuckles. Ah, yes. A little-known incident when camel handlers and traders revolted against unfair taxes and brutal conditions. It wasn't just people who were restless. Some accounts say camels themselves rebelled, refusing to move, even throwing tantrums. Historians still argue the extent of this uprising. Some consider it exaggerated folklore, others suggest it was a series of coordinated strikes disrupting trade routes. Fringe tales even speak of camels escaping their owners, roaming freely and causing chaos along the Silk Roads. The pass itself seems to echo with history. Stones are piled in makeshift cairns, perhaps memorials left by those who lived, or died, during those turbulent times. You notice tufts of fur snagged on the posts, and Grumble snorts knowingly. As you traverse the pass, you feel a mixture of camaraderie and defiance in the air. The Detour wasn't just a secret path, it was a refuge, a statement. Traders and animals alike demanded respect, choosing to walk, or refuse to walk, routes that spoke to their survival and dignity. You camped near a rocky ledge that evening, sharing stories of rebellions, roadblocks, and resilience over a modest fire. The wind whistles through the pass, carrying with it the faint sound of hooves, or maybe just your imagination. Grumble settles beside you, eyes half closed, occasionally emitting a satisfied hiccup. The Detour continues to reveal its layers, not just paths and places, but moments of rebellion and spirit etched into the very stones. The chill of the mountain air nips at your cheeks as you push forward from the rocky ledge, the memory of the Great Camel Uprising hanging like a fog in your mind. Grumble, surprisingly spry for a creature with a penchant for fermented figs, leads confidently through a narrow ravine dotted with wildflowers that glow faintly in the fading light. The path feels alive, almost humming with the echoes of past footsteps, human and beast alike. Ahead, you encounter a small circle of monks, their robes stained with travel dust and their eyes reflecting the wisdom of countless journeys. They greet you with quiet smiles, offering you cups of steaming tea brewed from herbs gathered nearby. As you sip, one of the monks, a wizened man named Tashi, begins to speak of tea-time paradoxes, describing how their order lives somewhat outside of conventional time, preserving memory and ritual along this detour. He explains that the act of brewing and sharing tea here isn't just refreshment, it's a ritual to anchor memory, a way to connect past, present, and future travelers. This tea circle has existed for centuries, with monks passing down recipes and stories that keep the detour alive in mind and spirit. Mainstream fact: tea culture was deeply embedded in Silk Road societies, serving as social glue, currency, and even spiritual practice. Fringe tidbit: some monasteries along less traveled routes developed unique tea rituals believed to create time loops or preserve travelers' memories, blurring lines between reality and legend. Historians debate whether these were metaphorical or literal practices. You watch as the monks move fluidly, their actions precise yet gentle, each pour and sip heavy with meaning. The detour, you realize, isn't just physical, it's temporal, a place where history folds in on itself. Grumble, as if sensing the gravity, sits solemnly, occasionally hiccuping as if trying to keep time himself. You rest here for a night, the murmurs of the tea ceremony blending with the mountain breeze, feeling the detour's mysteries deepen. The next morning, you break camp under a sky smeared with soft pinks and blues, the kind of dawn that promises change. The monk's tea ceremony lingers in your mind like a gentle echo as you step back onto the trail, Grumble leading with an air of renewed purpose, or maybe just a sugar rush from some leftover tea leaves. The detour's path now twists through jagged canyons where the wind speaks in riddles. Suddenly, a sandstorm kicks up, an angry, swirling beast of dust and grit that blinds and disorients. You hunker down, pulling scarves tight over your faces, the world reduced to a roaring hush. When the storm finally subsides, you emerge to find the landscape subtly altered. The valley you thought you knew has shifted, paths vanish, rocks rearranged, as if the land itself is playing a game of musical chairs. You soon learn that entire towns and caravan stops along this detour once moved like mirages, not disappearing but retreating into the shifting sands and re-emerging elsewhere. Traders adapted by becoming masters of memory and code, relying on cryptic signs, whispered legends, and natural cues like the blooming of rare desert flowers. Sarah, ever the botanist, points out a flower that blooms only where the land is about to change, delicate and pale, with petals that seem to shimmer in the dying light. Historians still argue whether these shifting cities were literal or metaphorical, but oral traditions from desert tribes speak of towns that escaped conquest and destruction by fading into the sands, only to reappear when the time was right. The detour, it seems, isn't just a route through space, but a journey through a landscape that breathes and moves with its own secret will. That night, you camp under a sky bursting with stars, the scent of rare desert blooms mingling with the crisp night air. Grumble snores softly, his breath mingling with the whispering wind as the detour reveals itself once again, not static, but alive. The dawn brings a quiet calm after the restless night, and you pack up your camp slowly, mindful of the mysterious desert flower Sarah showed you. Its delicate petals shimmer faintly under the early light, like a secret whispered by the wind. You can't help but wonder what other mysteries this detour hides. As you continue, the landscape shifts again, now a patchwork of rocky outcrops and sandy stretches, with ancient ruins barely visible beneath the shifting dunes. The trail twists and turns, sometimes vanishing only to reappear further on, like a mirage playing tricks on your eyes. Grumble trots ahead, unfazed, occasionally glancing back as if to say, "Keep up, will you?" Your group comes upon a wide plain dotted with sparse vegetation, where the air feels thick with anticipation. Suddenly, the ground beneath you seems to ripple, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement that unsettles your balance. You look closer and realize that entire clusters of stones and structures are slowly shifting, carried by hidden underground movements or the whims of the desert itself. Tins and mutters, the shifting cities. They move not just in stories. You watch as a ruined tower slowly leans and slides, dust trailing behind like a ghostly veil. The detour, you realize, is less a fixed path and more a living maze. Its cities and stops migrating to avoid conquest, disease, or decay. Historians still debate whether these shifting cities were actual phenomena or exaggerated legends born to explain the disappearance of towns. Some believe they were natural responses to environmental changes, while others suggest deliberate engineering or even mystical forces. Amid the ruins, you discover a cluster of rare desert flowers, the ones that bloom only where the earth is unsettled, their petals opening in delicate defiance. Sarah collects a few, her fingers trembling with excitement. The sun dips low, casting long shadows across the moving landscape. You set up camp, the air filled with the sweet scent of the desert blooms and the distant calls of unseen creatures. Grumble settles beside you, his breath slow and steady, as if content to be part of this ever-changing story. As night falls, the stars above seem to pulse in rhythm with the earth's subtle movements, the detour's secrets unfolding one quiet step at a time. You wake slowly as the first light of dawn filters through the shifting sands, the desert flower's delicate scent lingering in the cool morning air. The detour feels alive beneath your feet, a landscape in flux, as though the very ground remembers and rewrites itself with every step. Grumble stretches and yawns, the sounds muffled beneath the whisper of the wind. As you make your way onward, the trail narrows between towering dunes, their slopes soft but treacherous. Your eyes catch a flash of color, a vibrant flower unlike any you've seen before, blooming defiantly against the harsh sand. Sarah kneels beside it, marveling at its beauty and rarity. Legend says this desert bloom only flowers where lies have been told, thriving on deceit as if absorbing the falsehoods around it. You chuckle at the thought, remembering the camel's drunken detour that started it all. The flower's existence feels like a metaphor, beauty growing from misdirection and mistakes. Historians still debate the origins and significance of such flora, questioning whether their appearances were mere coincidence or deeply intertwined with the cultural myths and spiritual beliefs of Silk Road travelers. The path twists again, and you find yourself standing at a crossroads, a place where the detour loops back toward the main Silk Road but feels irrevocably altered. Signs are weathered and confusing, some pointing both ways, others swallowed by sand. Grumble pauses, hiccups, and snorts as if to say, "Trust me." You follow his lead, stepping confidently down the lesser-known path, the sun casting long shadows that stretch like time itself bending back on the journey. Behind you, the detour seems to sigh, a quiet breath of history and mystery settling into the sands once more. As you step off the dusty detour and back toward the main Silk Road, a strange feeling settles over you, as if everything has subtly shifted during your journey. The familiar caravans, the chatter of traders, even the smell of spiced teas and fresh bread feels different, layered with a new understanding. The main road hasn't just been bypassed, it's been rewritten. You glance at Grumble, who plods along with a satisfied grin, as if he knows exactly what he's done. Your maps now include markings that were never there before, stars and symbols that weren't on any charts. The merchants around you speak of new alliances, unexpected trade flows, and routes that defy the old boundaries. Historians still debate whether the Detour truly reshaped the Silk Road or if it was simply one of many forgotten paths, its influence obscured by time and dust. But you know better. The Detour rewrote the story, shifting trade, culture, and even politics. A drunken camel's misstep cascaded into centuries of change. And as the sun dips low, painting the horizon in hues of gold and rose, you realize that the Silk Road's true magic lies not in its destination, but in the unexpected journeys it inspires. Grumble lets out one last hiccup, a toast to the road less traveled. You trudge along the familiar road, now tinged with the strange sense that you've been part of something far bigger than a simple caravan journey. Grumble ambles at your side, the same mischievous sparkle in his eyes that led you astray so many miles ago. The sun lowers itself, casting long shadows that stretch like ancient stories across the earth. As night falls, you pause beside a quiet oasis, the water shimmering under a sky thick with stars. You pull the last scroll from your saddlebag, now worn and fragile, its ink faded but its message clear. The Detour wasn't just a path, it was a rewrite of history, a hidden thread woven into the fabric of trade and legend. You think about all you've seen, ghost towns with doorbells, marmot standoffs, celestial camels, tea-time paradoxes, and a rebellious camel who hiccuped his way into legend. The Detour wasn't just an accidental path, it was a living, breathing part of the Silk Roads, guarded by nature, spirits, and those who dared to walk it. Grumble hiccups one last time, his breath warm against the cooling night air. You lean back, eyes tracing constellations that might once have guided traders, dreamers, and rebels alike. Somewhere, beneath the stars, the Detour waits, quiet, secret, ready to call the next curious soul. And with that, your journey closes, wrapped in mystery and the soft whisper of the desert wind. Now, as the stars softly settle into their places above, you feel the gentle pulse of the earth beneath you slow to a calm rhythm. The desert's secrets, once sharp and vibrant, now fade into a warm, soothing haze, like the last embers of a campfire glowing softly before sleep. Whatever questions or wonders the Detour stirred in you can rest here for a while, safe in the quiet night. You're tucked into the folds of history and myth, cradled by the stories of traders, monks, camels, and the shifting sands that carried them. The road may have twisted and turned, but it has brought you here, to this moment of calm. So, breathe deeply, let your thoughts drift like the desert breeze, and know that the journey continues in dreams. Good night, traveler.